You mentioned there's some dates where you're at New York that just jump out to you, scream to you that you got to be there. What
Yeah.
are some of those dates?
October 27th.
Okay.
If I had to tell you, I mean, if you would have asked me this maybe 3, 4 years ago, my answer would have been vastly different. I would have put you in that early rut, that November 4th, 5th,
Sure.
which is still a fantastic time to be in the woods. But being analytical, October 27th is my best day to kill a patternable rutting buck. The deer that I see on that day are deer that I know.
Right.
Those are deer that are checking those scrapes. I start seeing these bucks show up to scrapes early. That October 20th, 23rd range is when you may get your first daytime picture of a buck on a scrape, at least here, anyways. But that October 27th, like I said, from the last 4 or 5 years, if I were to, and I write everything down on paper. Nothing is on a computer or data. It's all on pieces of paper. And when I put them side by side, that day, morning and night, for some reason, just stands out. And that's one of those days I just won't miss. So to me, that's a time when, the deer, they're kind of getting ready. Like I said, that's a late pre-rut, I guess you could call it. But to me, that has been the best day of the year every year. I mean, October 31st, Halloween's a good one. I could never do it. I'm trick-or-treating for the next 10 years or so. So maybe in the future, I'll get to that one. Evening, especially October 31st has always been a good day, and there's a lot of good days throughout the season. But if you were to ask me to pick one day out of the year, it would absolutely be October 27th.
So tell me about your ideal setup for October 27th. Is it on a scrape? Is it on a transition to a food source? Where have you got most of these pictures in daylight and morning and evening on the 27th? Because it clearly jumps out to you.
So for me, I'm a big pinch point funnel type guy. If I can find it via like a terrain feature where, let's say, the small portion of woods next down where it's just a skinny portion of woods where they feel comfortable traveling, that to me is one of my ideal spots. You can find those within a large block of woods as well. It's much more difficult to find, especially if you're looking at, like an aerial map or something like that, and you're trying to find that funnel or that pinch point. But I mean, I've had a lot of luck with putting mock scrapes out, let's say, in within a big block of woods. But when it comes to them approaching it's always been kind of a gamble. Whereas if I can find that real good funnel that has a mock scrape or a scrape that they've created that I've, year after year where they keep showing up, if I can find that mock scrape within that pinch point, and I know there's only one or two ways they're going to come, that to me has been my best setup, and I have a few of those that time of year, October 27th, I don't care what it's doing, I will be in one of those spots. So
Okay.
that would be, I would say, probably the top.
Yeah, it's I would say I like the October 22nd for whatever reason, the 25th
Yeah.
and 27th, 31st.
Yeah.
And I see where like cold fronts often play a pretty big part in that. But
Sure.
if it's all right, what if it's 90 degrees on October 27th? What's your level of
I'm
excitement?
still going. I'm still
Yeah.
excited, man. Early season's fantastic. That first week, especially. It's typically here. It's been every year. It's getting warmer and warmer. I feel like, we could almost hunt with a t-shirt on, but beginning of October is fantastic. But it's one of those days. I mean, I have what I call honey-do list days, basically where I won't hunt, and one of them being like a no wind day. Let's say if the forecast says light and variable or there's 5 miles an hour or less, I don't see the deer movement, number one. And number two, to actually pull a draw off, like we were talking
Yeah.
earlier, to pull it off with a mature whitetail when there's no wind is extremely difficult. But October 27th, I don't care what it's doing, I'm going. So outside of that, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned it's a buck that you likely know on the 27th. So is that a
Yes.
deer that typically you have in the summer during velvet, or is it a deer that you pick up late September? And I know every deer is different, but if there's a theme that you have seen, what is that?
So I would say you start seeing velvet bucks maybe like July, let's say early July, the velvet bucks come in. And all of those deer that I see July and August are deer that are eventually going to be on that property, whether it's early season, late season rut. You kind of get a whole snapshot of the entire deer population, in my eyes, outside of that small window of that November 5th to 10th, where things are just kind of crazy, where you can maybe get a deer that would run miles away chasing a doe or whatever. Outside of that, those deer you see in that early, summertime in velvet are deer you're going to see. So Typically, once they shed their velvet early September, I would call those your resident bucks. So come early September, velvet comes off September 5th, whatever it may be. Those bucks that you are seeing then are going to stay typically till first to second week of October, I would say.
Hmm.
Then after that, you'll get another shift that would essentially come in after the 15th. That's why that early October pre-rut, like you said, that 20th, 21st, 22nd, you'll see those bucks. But those bucks you see during that pre-rut were there in the summer as well. It's they were there before, and I don't know if they're just kind of left their tab open at the bar and said, "Hey, I'll be back," just checking out the area, but they do come back, and even later in November, from that like 15th to 17th range, you'll get another rush of deer that were there on your property as well in the summer. You'll see them again, even into that December 4th, where you get that, second rut time or something like that. All the deer that I do see throughout the season, I've seen in the summertime. They may only show up once or twice in the summer, but it's typically the same deer, that come through. They just spend different times there, So, and that could be conducive to your property, whether you have, destination food sources, water. There's tons of terrain features as to why they do it. And I personally think they all act differently based on that property. That's why, when I develop that formula, it's based for the properties I hunt.